Discover what's happening in the grim, dying universe.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Netwürk Chatter Season 2, Episode 3. I know it has been a long time since the last drop. I'm going to try and get better about that because I really want to start sharing these videos again. If you rewind and go back and watch the second episode or even the first episode of Season 2, you'll know that we're covering 3 things in each of these little segments. Mechanic Panic, where we talk about some sort of mechanic in the vast Grimm games. A Lore Explorer, where we do a deeper dive into some of the setting and lore in the actual game. And Just Discovered, something that's happening in production, design, new game things that I'm working on, just things that I have going on that I want to share with you. So let's go ahead and dive into... Okay, so at Gen Con, I got to play Raptor Ruckus. That is the Jurassic Park-inspired Morkborg hack coming out in 2026. I loved how they handled consumables like ammunition. It felt like it was right at home in the Vast Grimm playstyle. So in the upcoming Network Operator Manual, there will be new optional rules for consumables. I found in games that I run, both both one-shot and long-form campaigns, people tend not to track their batteries and their ammo, even though I'll give sheets or a way to keep track of it. Because of this, I started adding an extra roll every time a battery, ammo, or other consumable is used in play. And the result of the die roll could cause that to finish off what's left. So let's break down how this works, right? So let's say you're using a blaster. Normally that uses 4 charges on a battery every time it's used, every time it's fired. So when you roll a d20 to hit, you grab a d8 to see if it drains the battery. So this feels a little more Borgish because, everything seems to be really kind of random, lots of things happening on the fly, lots of faster combat. So if you roll that d8 and you get a 1, that battery is out of juice. You drained it shooting it. You could have really great rolls and not drain a battery the entire game, right? But in this instance, if you do drain it, it's going to give you the maximum damage for that firing. So the blaster is going to do all 6 points of damage. Same would work for ammo, food, pharma, or anything else that you would manually track. A little hack to try and keep fight scenes speedy. Roll all the dice at once. Attack, damage, consumables. Just roll them all at once. So that way you're rolling, you get to find out everything, all 3 dice all at one time, and then you can keep moving on, keep the story going, and keep that narrative having the momentum that you want it to have. All right, now that's it for Mechanic Panic. This will be an optional roll in the consumables. If you have any questions, thoughts, post them down below in the notes, post them in the Discord. I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. All right, we are going to dive into the airlock and go into a... Boom, I'm back. That was fast, right? Here we are. For this Lore Explorer, I wanted to dive into the Cybersharks because they were first introduced in the Space Raiders book. Then Torched made an appearance in Helltrap Barges. And then his sister Jara was a key NPC in a Grimm Outlook. On top of all that, there was a much larger focus on them in Jaws of Madness, which is part 2 in the Gate of Infinite Stars ongoing adventure campaign series. Now, before diving into the Cybersharks as they relate to Vast Grimm, I want to reveal some of the Easter eggs and how my brain works a little bit as these things go, because the Cybersharks are a culmination of some of my childhood favorites. Each member of the faction, excluding prospects, must have their lower jaw removed and replaced with a metal mandible. This was 100% influenced by Trapjaw from He-Man, Masters of the Universe, all of those cartoons, because I had a bunch of those toys, I watched the cartoons, even had the role-playing game at some point in the 80s when picking it up from some small department store going on a family trip. Following in this theme, though, most of the members are named after G.I. Joe's Dreadnoks. Even as a little kid, I gravitated towards those punk rock aesthetic of this band of misfits. If you do a quick search for the members' names of the Dreadnoks, you'll quickly see a similarity to the names of the members of the Cybersharks. Now, the Cybersharks, okay, so enough digging into how my brain works. Let's talk about the Cybersharks themselves. They were not a well-known raider faction until footage went viral of their shark-shaped starship taking down a Grimm barge. The feed showed massive neuromantic tentacles lashing out from the Cybersharks vessel, demolishing the other starship. It was then that people began to fear the Cybersharks. And as a relatively new member of the crew, Torched realized how impactful people's perception was. The more menacing they looked, the greater fear they would instill. So he suggested to Captain Zara that all members of their faction must have their jaws removed and replaced with a menacing metal mandible. He also knew that anyone that was willing to do this would be inclined to do anything for the Cybersharks. I mean, it's not just anybody that's willing to get their jaw ripped off and replaced with a piece of metal. So the Cybersharks are working hard to try and acquire as many pieces to the Gate of Infinite Stars as possible. They don't really have scientific knowledge, though, on how to construct the final gate. But they hope with enough leverage, they can be guaranteed a way out of the universe once they have enough of the pieces. In the Jaws of Madness adventure, they have one of those pieces buried on Moon 39-SP3, where their hideout is located. That's just a little bit about the Cybersharks, and we're even going to talk about them more in the Just Discovered section of today's chat. So let's dive into the airlock and see if we can get into the Just Discovered. Also, if you have questions about the Cybersharks, thoughts on them, thoughts of them as a faction, drop them in the comments below. Throw them up on the Discord, in the Grimm Place Discord, or even the Grimm Place Facebook group. Okay, here we go. Airlock commencing. We're back. And we are with Just Discovered, and this is Cybersharks Plunderlust. So, many of you know that we created a card game called Plunderlust, where you're building out a crew of space pirates, exploring locations, fighting monsters, trying to defeat a boss monster before your 7 cards of life meter run out. Each of the 7 decks are based on one of the different space pirate factions in that book I showed earlier, in Space Raiders. So there is a deck specifically for the Cybersharks. And so, since so much has happened since I released the last Netwürk Chatter, I wanted to talk about this, and it is currently available on the Creature Curation website. It's an expandable card game set in the vast Grimm universe, but rather than go into the mechanics of gameplay, I want to show you how these can be used in the RPG. So I showed you that I have that Cybersharks Raider deck, and they're included in that deck are 60 cards that have locations, gear, monsters, merc, scum, and favors. So let's look at the scum, right? The scum are the 7 members of the Space Pirate faction. Each of them have, sorry, everything's backwards to me. They have hit points, they have armor, they have weapons. So these could actually be used in the RPG gameplay. A GM could be like, hey, you'll run into Ripped in the hall, and you have their stats. You even have bonus things that can be translated into the mechanics of the RPG as well. So it's pretty awesome. And the deck also has gear like weapons, armor, pharma, and other items that could be useful for your players. You could easily shuffle the cards up when someone's searching a room and hand them a random card for what they find. And speaking of exploring, this deck's location is set on Marauder's Cryosphere, and it has 5 different location cards. Yes, each Raider faction deck has different locations, so you could easily use these cards to help create an adventure by using the locations as a crawl. You could even fill them with the creatures from the monster cards in the deck. So there's like, in this one, just like the scum cards, they all have hit points, armor, weapons, and special abilities. I'm looking at some gear right now, so you could run into a Craniferous. You could run into the Devil of Archon, which is a massive Salazarite that is one of the boss monsters in this deck. There's all sorts. You could run into mercenaries that work either way. You could run into a cherub, and some of these have special abilities like ambush and things like that. So you could even, as you can see, these cards serve dual purpose for both the game Plunderlust and for the RPG Vast Grimm. It's one of the things we want to do is make sure things overlap. If there's anything that you want to find out about in an upcoming Netwurk Chatter, any lore explorer, any specific rules, anything that you'd like me to show off, most likely it'll be whatever I'm working on at the moment. Mention it in the comments below. Mention it in Discord. Discord's the place I'm going to be the most, in the Grimm Place Discord. I will make sure to link it down in the comments. Okay, that's all I've got for this week. Stay tuned, subscribe to the channel, because I'll be sure to be putting out more Netwurk Chatter. All right, I'm jumping out the airlock.